Greetings to my Mountain View Thunder family. If you are seeing this via video, that means that either we had some technical difficulties Skyping from either Kyrgyzstan or Afghanistan, or I'm simply not there yet. Regardless, I am honored to be able to speak with you about this occasion of Veterans Day. And I should also mention that this tape was made possible by the South Carolina USO organization, so my heartfelt thanks and gratitude to them for allowing me the opportunity to do this. Currently I'm sitting at Camp McCready inside the USO room. I imagine that there are some questions about what I am doing, and though this assembly is truly not about me, I will share a little bit of what has happened with me for the past few weeks. As of this taping, I can only tell you what I've done and what I expect to do. After leaving Mountain View on September 28th, I took a few days of vacation to spend with my family. Then on October 5th, I officially checked in for active duty at the Naval Operational Support Center in Portland. 2 days later, after saying a very tearful goodbye to my family at PDX, I boarded a plane to San Diego, where I spent a week of administrative processing, including a medical screening, doing some paperwork, including powers of attorney and updating my last will and testament, and getting basic uniform issues such as this lovely ensemble I'm wearing today. On October 13th and 14th, I flew to Columbia, South Carolina, and am currently at Camp McCready, which is an Army National Guard training facility where Navy individual augmentees such as me come for basic combat training prior to deploying to Afghanistan, Iraq, Kuwait, and Djibouti, Africa. There are approximately 250 Navy personnel here for this cycle, with some of those going to Kuwait, some to Djibouti, and like me, many of us to Afghanistan. Upon arrival here, we were issued more gear, mainly including the safety equipment such as our body armor, our Kevlar helmet, and of course, our weapons. I've been issued an M4 rifle and a 9mm Beretta, both of which I will carry as I move on to Afghanistan. Most of our time here has been spent either in a classroom setting or out in the field actually applying our classroom knowledge or finding our weapon systems to become more proficient. Having been through this training process here at Camp McCready once before, in 2006, I am quite happy to see the many improvements that have been made in the last 6 years. By the time you see this video, I will either be in Kyrgyzstan or Afghanistan. My mission there, as it currently is, will be to serve on a biometrics team. What I do know is that I will be making several day trips throughout the country of Afghanistan to collect biometric data, including fingerprints, iris scans, and taking DNA samples of the Afghans who wish to join the military or national police system. In addition to analyzing that information, I may also analyze fragments of IEDs and other bomb-making materials. It appears that my job will require a lot of travel, so clearly I have been quite attuned to the training being provided here at Camp McCready, especially the training regarding convoy operations and IEDs, which are the improvised explosive devices oftentimes employed by the insurgents to disrupt or destroy NATO operations. I'm actually looking forward to the work I will be doing, but certainly concerned for my own personal safety. But I truly don't want to spend this time talking about me. As you can well imagine, Veterans Day is a holiday with significant meaning to me. However, it's not only because I proudly wear the cloth of our great nation that it means so much, but rather for what it represents. And this is what I want to spend a few minutes talking about. The history of Veterans Day is relatively simple. Though it is an American holiday, its roots were born out of World War I, where on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, an armistice went into effect between the Allied nations and Germany. Thus, in November of 1919, President Wilson declared that November 11th would be known as Armistice Day, and would be a day of reflection for the great heroism and sacrifices displayed by American service members in the war that was to be the war to end all wars. But as you well know, our country, and indeed many countries throughout the world, would be involved in several more conflicts and wars. Thus, in 1954, by the signature of President Eisenhower, who served as the Supreme Commander of Allied forces during World War II, the name was changed to Veterans Day to represent all who had served our nation in uniform. But Veterans Day is much more than just a holiday. I'd like to share with you just a couple examples of why this holiday is so important to me and what it truly represents. While at Camp McCready, I have been listening to a book on tape, one of which several of you have likely read. It is written by James Bradley and is called Flags of Our Fathers. The book tells the stories behind the 6 men captured forever in history by one single frame of black and white film. It is about the iconic image of the 6 men raising the flag, the American flag, over Mount Suribachi after the capture of Iwo Jima during World War II. The men captured on film are only 6 of the more than 70,000 U.S. Marines and Navy corpsmen that fought for over a month on that island, in a battle that was one of the bloodiest on record, and served as the tipping point of the war to our favor. Of those 70,000 men, 9,400 ultimately lost their life in that battle, many of those within the first several hours, and nearly 24,000 more were severely wounded. It took a month for the 70,000 American troops to overcome 22,000 embedded Japanese soldiers. As I have listened to the tape, I have closed my eyes and tried to imagine just what those men and the hundreds of thousands of others who served in World War II and who have served in other wars for our nation must have seen. I try to envision what life was like for them. What I do know is that their life during war was much more difficult and different than mine. Their access to family was limited, whereas I have the pleasure of having been able to call my family at least once every day thus far. The training that they took was much more intense, as it lasted for months, almost a year in some cases, and oftentimes was after they'd already returned home from another battle in a different part of the world. Their fight was more courageous, as it was less technologically advanced, and quite frankly more face-to-face with their enemy. And their outcome was definitely more grim, as the percentage of men who were wounded or died was so much greater than the war I am involved in. Our nation has been involved in many conflicts throughout the years, dating back to the very roots that gave birth to our nation, the Revolutionary War. A common thread throughout all of the wars has been freedom, whether that freedom has been directly for American citizens such as us, or for others throughout the world. The last time I deployed, I served in Iraq and worked with some special forces. I served at the headquarters for a special forces group that had teams throughout the country. Part of my job was to assist those kicking in the doors to make sure that they kicked in the right doors and got the right people off the streets. On September 29, 2006, I was secondhand to a situation that demonstrated what true honor, courage, and commitment, incidentally, the Navy core values. One of our teams was doing an operation in Ramadi, which at the time was a comparatively very unstable part of Iraq. Most operations were done under the cover of darkness. That evening was no different. On that night, Petty Officer Michael Mansour and 3 other SEALs were working with some Iraqi Army members on an operation. Their job was to provide a sniper overwatch to the team on the ground. Nearly all of the houses in Iraq have an open rooftop, allowing the residents to retreat to the roof, especially at night during the summer, to escape the temperatures when it's much colder outside. During the operation, an unseen insurgent threw a grenade up upon the roof. That grenade hit Petty Officer Michael Mansour in the chest and fell to the ground at his feet. He was standing very close to the exit, the only exit off the roof, and he could have easily had escaped and gone down those stairs and provided himself safety. But in doing so, he would have left 3 other SEALs, as well as the Iraqi soldiers on top of that roof, endangering all of them. Instinctively, and with the honor and courage and commitment, he yelled out "grenade" to warn his comrades as to what was there, and then threw himself upon the grenade. Yes, the grenade did explode, and it severely wounded 2 of the other 3 SEALs. 6 of the Iraqis were injured heavily as well. Petty Officer Mansour died very shortly thereafter of massive blood loss. Without a doubt, it was his selfless actions that saved the lives of those others that night, for without him, they too would have perished. He was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions on that night. Oftentimes, the meaning of Veterans Day is associated with Memorial Day. Memorial Day is truly a day to honor those who have selflessly given their lives so that others may enjoy freedom. But Veterans Day is more of a celebration. Yes, it is a day to remember the fallen, but just as importantly, and perhaps more importantly, it is but one day each year to celebrate all veterans and to say thank you to them for wearing our nation's cloth. And whether they actually fought in combat or not, to thank them for being willing to rise tall in the face of oppression and declare to all the world that the freedoms earned shall be for all and not taken for granted. For it is because of those men and women who have and who were then or are now willing to sacrifice their very presence on this earth, that we are able to enjoy simple freedoms that we take for granted each and every day. Freedoms such as traveling freely about our country and frankly throughout most of the world. Respectfully speaking our minds when we disagree. Receiving an education and simply having a choice in what we do day to day. I challenge each of you on Monday to not take the day off from school. Rather, I would hope that each of you would reach out to a veteran or two or three and simply say thank you. Almost every one of us has a relative that has served our nation. I'm confident that everyone in the room knows somebody who has served our nation. Personally, I call my father every year, as I will this year, God willing, to say thank you for his service to our nation. When I see other veterans, I say thank you to them. I have taken great pleasure in anonymously buying meals for veterans that I see at restaurants. They're usually not too hard to spot, especially on Veterans Day. Do not be embarrassed, do not be ashamed. Be proud, be brave, and simply say thank you. Because it is for them that we take the freedoms that we have today. There are veterans within the audience today. Some of them are on staff, and I'm sure that there's some guests in the room as well. Say thank you to them before they can get out of the room. It is the right thing to do. With that, I say thank you to you for allowing me to join you today. With any luck, perhaps I can be a guest speaker at a similar assembly next year in person there at Mountain View, right after my return from Afghanistan. I want to say thank you to all of you, and remember to thank a vet. Have a great day. Go Thunder.